All set. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the City Streets Safety Advisory Committee. We'll take roll call to see who's here today. Collins, we start with you.
Yeah, Collins Roth, present.
Kathy Osterholm, present.
Steve Carson, present.
Tricia Davis, present.
Mark Saunders, present, and Cliff Heidling is not present.
Dave Diefendorfer here.
Melissa Riesco, present.
And Mike Venanzi is not here. But we do have a quorum, so we're ready to roll. Okay, approval of minutes. You've all had the opportunity to look at the January 22nd minutes. Does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns? Okay, can we have a motion to accept?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes on January 22nd, 2026.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Correspondence, we haven't received any correspondence that we're going to be discussing today. Old business, we really don't have any old business, but I just want to make one brief announcement that the mayor and the staff has asked that we present everything that we have to present from our committee to the Board of Commissioners on their second meeting of the month, rather than sometimes the first, sometimes the second, because it gets a little hairy for them, keeping track of agendas and so forth. So on a regular basis going forward, we will be presenting everything to them at the second meeting in.
Does that mean just giving them our minutes and agenda, or
No.
like somebody saying this is what we talked about?
Yes, right, me saying that
So
this
you-
is what we
you
talked
will-
about, right?
You will, in the meetings, basically shorten and...
I will. There are two things that we've been talking about. Mainly is asking them to approve ideas that we have of subjects, and then when we come up with ideas, asking them to approve the ideas that we come up with. So the second meeting is going to be the designated, and the other committees are going to do the same. This isn't just us, but it's all of the committees. So just, in a way, it works out for us because it gives me and Patricia time to get everything together. We're not rushing it. We have a whole month then from our meeting till their meeting, so we have plenty of time. Okay.
One question on that.
Yes.
So will you be doing that, or if there's presentations, will you be expecting one of us to present the PowerPoint or whatever?
I'll be doing it if I'm here. I mean, you know,
Perfect.
if I don't get hit by a truck or something that day. Otherwise, Patricia will be.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Today, we have quite a presentation. Collins had mentioned to me that he had some ideas on bicycles. I had no idea how elaborate his ideas were, but I'm very impressed. And I'm just going to turn it over to Colin, and after he's done with his presentation, we can have some discussion.
Right,
All right?
okay.
Great.
There's two elements to this. The first is, I think, what we discussed of just some definitions as they exist today.
Did you want to put them up on
And
the?
I'll do that. And
Great.
then the second is a proposal that's not just me, it's also Mike, who was
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately couldn't be here today, but, and some thinking we had on trying to create, and I understand there's some history to this,
Can you talk into your microphone? There we
a
go.
bike network around a safe, attractive, and used bike network through and around Rehoboth. So, yeah, if I can, I'll stand up here, I guess. And could we put up the definitions?
I think she turns it on and you put it up by putting
okay.
it on that little spot there.
Do I have a?
There you go. Just,
Oh, all right. So
yeah, right, you place it on that
Put the
spot.
electronic version of it up?
Do you have the electronic version?
It's what's attached to the.
Well, I can't operate that while I'm working.
All right, okay, then I'll try.
But this works pretty well. I think you'll find that upside down. There you go.
This is all attached to the agenda, so.
There you go. Can I just interrupt you? And for those in the audience, as he just said, it is attached to the agenda. If everybody wants to follow along on a copy of this, if you happen to have a copy of the agenda and a cell phone, you can hit the little blue sign that says Agenda Additions, and you'll get exactly what we're looking at here.
Copies of this here, if anybody.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Thank you.
So first, some definitions, because I ended up sort of reading the Delaware Code and the Rehoboth Code on kind of what a bike is and what an e-bike is and what an e-bike, very importantly, I think for this, what an e-bike is not. And that's basically what this does. So let's start with a traditional bike. So traditionally, bike is defined as you would think. Basically, Delaware law gives a traditional bike the rights and responsibilities of any street-driven vehicle. It does allow them on sidewalks and roads, but it gives cities the opportunity to restrict usage on sidewalks, provided there are signs saying that the restriction is in place. So Rehoboth does restrict use on sidewalks, although I'm not sure the signage is quite up to par with what it should be. Just putting, walk your bike on the sidewalk, which is what is done. So e-bikes are a little more complicated, as one would expect. The basic things are it needs to be less than a 750 watt, which is 1 horsepower motor. And that basically could move a bike weight object up to about 28 miles per hour. And it needs to be pedal assist in the state of Delaware, and that's really important. You have to be pedaling for that motor to come on. There are 3 classes of e-bikes, 1, 2, and 3. Class 2 in Delaware is not pedal assist, so it's basically not allowed in Delaware. So if you see anybody who is on a bike and they're just sitting and they're riding and they're accelerating and keeping their pace, that is technically a moped. It's not a bike. And it's not allowed in the state of Delaware. Class 1 is kind of the most of what you see, which is a lower than 20 mile per hour. Usually they go up to about 17, and you pedal to move the bike as you go. Many of those look exactly like a regular bike. Those are allowed under Rehoboth rules. Those are allowed under Delaware rules. Class 2, as I said, is not allowed under Delaware law, and so as a result, not allowed in Rehoboth. Class 3 is allowed under, and these go faster, they're between 20 and 28 miles an hour. Those, Delaware puts extra restrictions on in terms of you need to be over 18, you need to have a helmet, a variety of other little things. They're not allowed under Rehoboth rules. Now, one of the things, and I discussed this with Lisa, is Rehoboth actually allowed to restrict the use of those? And I'm not sure that Rehoboth can, if Delaware specifically allows something, Rehoboth cannot allow it. But those class 3s are different set of rules, not allowed under current Rehoboth rules, but allowed in Delaware. Traditional scooters and skateboards, Delaware law is silent. As a result, Rehoboth can make the rules that it wants. And Rehoboth basically bans the use of them on the streets and the sidewalks during the summer, and then restricts certain areas around town for scooters and skateboards. Motorized scooters and skateboards that go above 15 miles an hour are effectively banned in Delaware, so 15 mile an hour limit on those. And there's a conflict between Delaware law and Rehoboth law as to electric scooters and skateboards that go below 15 miles an hour. Delaware law allows them. Rehoboth law doesn't really refer to them, but includes them in their, they're included kind of by reference in the scooter and the skateboard law. Finally, mopeds. Mopeds are basically e-bikes that go above 20 miles an hour, e-bikes that you don't pedal, and those have their own set of rules under Delaware and Rehoboth that I didn't kind of get into. So that's it. I think that one of my takeaways from this is a lot of things that people see and they label as e-bikes are not, in fact, e-bikes, they're mopeds. And those are governed, if you ride a moped, you need to have a driver's license, you need to have a helmet, it needs to have a license plate. Now, all these things are not necessarily the case, and they're a little bit of a problem, obviously, when people bring in vehicles from out of state where the rules might be different. And they're not legally allowed, and I know Frank's here, who's the bike guy in town, but you can't sell those legally in the state of Rehoboth, but Amazon can send you one, which is part of the problem. I'm not sure that the restrictions hold for sort of online sales of those things.
Let's take questions
Yeah,
on this
sure.
part.
Yeah,
and then
perfect.
before we go to the next part. Are there any questions up here?
It's just not clear to me on whether or not e-bikes or traditional bikes are allowed on the boardwalk. Do you?
Rehoboth is allowed, Rehoboth has free reign to pass rules about the boardwalks, sidewalks, et cetera. So Rehoboth's rules are consistent with Delaware rules and are, they're allowed, regular bikes are allowed when they're allowed. Currently, there is no special restriction that I see for an e-bike that differentiates an e-bike, an allowed e-bike, so a pedal assist
Right.
on the boardwalk.
Because it looks like the e-bikes are not allowed on the boardwalk, but if I'm reading this correctly, and I just was curious whether or not there were any rules about bikes being on the boardwalk.
Rehoboth law, it's the time, those Saturday, I'm sorry, the morning times, they're allowed.
They are
and
allowed
yeah.
then?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. They're
thank you.
specifically allowed during those times and then during the off-season.
Okay, thank you very much.
And e-bikes are not,
Allowed at all?
under Rehoboth. the
Okay.
Rehoboth law.
Thank you.
We're going to do something a little different. We're going to open it up to questions from the audience, provided your questions are on this subject. If you're here for another subject, hold on, your time will come. But if anybody from public has a question on what Mr. Roth had said so far, now's the time. Come on, tell us who you are, your connection to Rehoboth Beach, please.
Okay. Lenny Richardson. I am a local bike shop manager, and I do live in Rehoboth Beach.
Great.
I do want to make sure that we're clear, Class 2 bikes are not mopeds. The Class 2, so with, and I've worked for a bike shop for 4 years now. Class 1 means it is pedal assist up to 20 miles an hour. Class 2 means it's pedal assist up to 20 miles an hour and has a throttle that can go 20 miles an hour. It is not a moped.
No, I think the Class 2 under Delaware code is throttle below 28 miles an hour, at least was my reading.
It is not, it's 20.
Okay, I may have read it wrong.
And
Okay,
that's,
yeah.
so, and even from the state of Delaware, throttle assisted max speed of 20, but it gives you an option to do both. Class 1 doesn't have a throttle. Class 2 does the same thing as Class 1, but you can use a throttle instead. And Class 3, same thing, goes up to 28 miles an hour, pedal assist only. Throttle still only goes to 20. And like you said before, what we sell meets all of this.
Yeah.
What you get from Amazon can be crazy. So those are some of the issues that we see. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that, yeah. Look, I'm no expert on this stuff. I watch legal shows on TV, so, but I am a big bike fan. The one interesting thing is the Delaware code does define all these things, and then it specifically in the dregs of its code says all e-bikes need to be pedal assist. There's a line in there, and it feels a little contradictory, but that's the key. The key line is pedal assist. What I don't know is if it's not pedal assist, is it automatically considered a moped and governed by those laws? That's why I kind of shortened it to it's treated, because Rehoboth law, if you go above 20 miles an hour, you're not an e-bike, because e-bikes are defined as being one. So what are you?
But Class 2 doesn't go above 20. Class 3 does. Class
Okay.
2 does not.
Understood.
Thank you.
Pedals and a motor.
Sir, you need to talk in the microphone because you're being recorded.
Yeah, understood.
It does say that if it's below 20 miles an hour, it is not considered a motorized vehicle. That's what the
Oh, it's not considered a motorized vehicle at all?
But if it's a moped, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Class 2 is not. As soon as it goes over 20 miles an hour, it is classified, from what I understand.
Got it.
And we don't sell a ton of Class 3, but we do have Class 3s that are available because they are legal.
Okay. Thank you for adding to the conversation. Thank you. All right. On to the next part.
Yeah. All right, this next part's going to be a little harder to make work here. I think I've been facing you right. So this is something that Mike and I put together over a period of a little while, with the idea of let's create something that has been talked about repeatedly in Rehoboth, which is a bike network, something that is safe and encouraging to bikers to move through our city. It's been talked about in various documents. I understand the Old Streets Committee also took it up. I won't belabor the whys. I do love this picture down here, which is a Dutch guy riding around with the size of a car around him to show you that bikes take up less space, Bikes are good for equity, and bikes power our economy effectively. Mike is, who owns Above the Dunes, is very focused on this because so many of his employees bike into town. It's the cheapest way for them, it's the affordable way for them to get in. So it's really important from an equity perspective. It's important from a economic perspective as well. I'm going to skip some of these things. I've got slides on health. One interesting one is that around the world, there's lots of data that people who bike spend more money when they get to their destinations. Unlike at CVS, where you pull up, you run in, you get in, and you leave, when you bike, you stick around. So there's a spending multiple to bikers that have surprised New York when they put in the bike lanes, London, et cetera, et cetera. Our goals here, that's my daughter a long time ago and my wife, is not to protect her on her tricycle out on the streets, but safety, number one, traffic management, number two, and carrots, not sticks, right? Too often with bikes, and you see that in the Rehoboth Code, there's all this sort of stuff thrown at bikes, right? But end of the day, I think Hoyt said it when he spoke at the last meeting that, bikes go where the bikers want to go, right? And so if you offer carrots rather than sticks, it's a much better way to get the results that I think everybody, pedestrians, drivers, because frankly, we're all the same people, right? Bikers, pedestrians, drivers. We want to avoid this, which is a bike network that is not usable, not direct, which is sort of what we have at the moment. When you get to the end of the bike trail, you're sent off into Grove Park and down Columbia somehow to get to the bandstand, which is a mile out of the way on your way there. It needs to be complete. This is where I say you're sent off to the left. The other side of Rehoboth Avenue, the bike lane just ends. There's no signaling as to where you should go at all. The one on the right is not Rehoboth, but it's very typical of bike lanes around the world that, second thought is given to the bike lane. First, there's a victory that we have a bike lane. It's got a tree in the middle of it, right? And I'm sorry my handwritten notes are on here. These were meant to be for me. This is our bike lane. It's not kept in good repair. It's not plowed, and that's not a picture. I didn't get out there this time, but it's not plowed, so you just can't bike when there's snow on the ground, right? It's important that we shovel out our parking spaces, but we don't shovel out the bike lane. This doesn't say we care, and again, it's not a carrot. It's a stick. There's limited signage around Rehoboth for bikes, and there needs to be. So directional signage, how to get places, wayfinding, how to get to parking, how to hopefully get to a place where you can pump your tire up if you need to. This is what, and some of the signage, this sign here, there's 5 of them around town that I could find. 3 of them are within 50 feet of each other at the end of King Charles, and it's wrong because you are allowed to kind of do a yield through a stop sign as a bicyclist. You don't need to follow a stop sign. So Mike and I have come up with something, it's not rocket science, but for a bike network, right? This is not bike lanes. I'm not saying reserve a piece of the street. I'm saying direct traffic down, slower speed, nicer, that are more pleasant to bike down, that people may not even know they can get to the bandstand relatively directly that way, for example. So we thought as direct as we can. Almost every resident of Rehoboth would be within 1,000 feet of this, so it's accessible to everybody. It gets people from Dewey to the state park, gets them in from out of town, gets them across town. And then it was a question of, well, what are the pressure points on this that are difficult? And you'll see we highlighted three little pressure points. I think the critical one is the circle. I think we all recognize that circle. This is the number 2 spot for crashes in Rehoboth, the circle, vehicles. And you see why. There's a slip lane coming in, you're merging in with traffic. We've all done it, right? Adding bikes to it is difficult, right? The current system at the moment encourages bikers to come down the path, mount the sidewalk along the side of Grove Park, as I show with the red line there, get up to the circle, come across the crosswalk, and then head down Rehoboth Avenue, right? So you're putting more bikes, and there's some numbers in the Rossi report. They saw about 900 bikes on the day they monitored up here. About 25% of them cut across that crosswalk to get on the other side of Rehoboth Avenue. And every one of those is, it's dangerous, right? We all know it, we all feel it. It's dangerous for pedestrians there. And they all head down Rehoboth Avenue because there's no other marked option to do anything else. This is probably the hardest to achieve and the most controversial piece of what we propose. Everything else is a little bit apple pie. But we suggest that it might be worth working with DelDOT to consider moving the crossing and maybe signalizing it. So putting a crossing that is further down, more towards Canal Street. There actually is a light there. It's a light for the bridge. And basically moving both pedestrians, because I think a lot of pedestrians cross there when they park on Canal Street and they walk across to Grove Park. Put a crossing there that could bring people to and from the museum and Egg and the like, pedestrians and bikers, they're all people. And maybe even closing off the crossing on the western side of the circle, right, which we all acknowledge is dangerous. Drivers are looking for traffic, they're not looking for people. You remove it, it's not that big a difference in space. I think this is a massive safety improvement. Now, DDOT has to be involved. That's a long process, I recognize, but this is key to the whole thing because then you can sign people and say, if you want to get to the bandstand, take a right, go down Canal Street, come down Hickman. It's nice, it's pleasant, it's slow, right? And get people to the beach that way. And it's not too far from Rehoboth Avenue where if you go left, you get way out much further away. So that's our key kind of thing. The second, and I know Cliff is not here, but Cliff is very focused on bikes on Bayard. But getting bikes off of Bayard, I think, is another important thing. We've talked about potentially a bike lane on King Charles, but King Charles is certainly a much nicer street to bike down. So directing traffic down to King Charles. That either needs to happen down Lake Drive, which is one way, and I'd love to see a counterflow bike lane if it's allowed, or St. Lawrence, down to King Charles, and then send people down King Charles. Final pinch point is Rehoboth Avenue and First Street, which we all know is a bit of a nightmare. The Rossi group saw 1,000 bikes there on the day they were there. That's 7% of vehicle traffic was bikes the day they were there. So it's pretty substantial. But the road narrows on both sides. We thought that two things might make sense here. The first is these green bike boxes like you have further up Rehoboth Avenue, which allows a bike to get out in front of the traffic because you've got a right turn lane and a straight lane, and a bike needs to move into the straight lane if it's going across. Just improves visibility and gives the bikes a slightly better position. And then potentially stop signs on either end just to slow traffic along the way. But recognize that there's the streetscape project, and this probably gets caught up in the streetscape project here. Almost done. Bike facilities, it would be great to include bike facilities, end-of-trip facilities, particularly pumping, parking, bike parking, right? Those are the two critical things. Having a bike pump will encourage people to bike because we've all been there where you realize your tire's flat and you're somewhere and you need to pump it up, right? Those are cheap to put in. They say to people on bikes that they're welcome. They say you're an important part of things. And so, recommend. They have them in the state park at the moment.
How do they work? They're electric? They're...
No, they're just, it's a pump. It's just,
pump.
it's sort of, I don't know if the bike owners know much about them, but they're basically built in, bolted down. They generally will have some hanging wires with some basic tools on them, and a bike pump there, so that you can.
Is an electric pump not feasible?
It could be. It just more cost. And then you need electricity, you need, so, you know, I'm sure that you could do solar powered somehow, but the basic ones are just a pump.
At Gordon's Pond, it's called a fix-it station.
Exactly.
And on the trails, there are fix-it stations.
Yeah. And then, you know, the second piece, and in my presentation, I won't bore everybody with it, but I did, while walking around over the last couple months with my dogs, a survey of bike parking. And what we have in Rehoboth is inadequate. There isn't enough of it. It's all on the sidewalks. So if you want to keep people off, 30% of the bike spots are on Rehoboth Avenue. If you don't want people on bikes on Rehoboth Avenue, don't put the bike racks on the sidewalk, because people are just going to bike up and off on the sidewalk. They're all these schoolyard style, where anybody who's been in a bike, when you stick your wheel in, your bike falls over. It bends the wheel. It limits the capacity. So I estimated we had something like 1,000 slots for bikes around town. I think it's probably only about 300 of them are usable, right? The ideal kind of bike parking is on the street, like we have on Baltimore, you know, where you take a little corner of the thing, and then something you can rest your bike against that has 2 points of contact and everything else. And there's a few of those around, but they're not even installed well. They're too close together. The new racks at the lifeguard station are down a set of stairs. Whoever thought that through has never ridden a bike, right? You don't want to haul your bike up a bunch of stairs, down a bunch of stairs. So I think some thought put into bike parking would, again, encourage people to bike, potentially move some of those bikes off of Rehoboth Avenue if we can make signage saying, hey, there's nice bike parking on Wilmington, on Baltimore, et cetera. And then move some of these spots from hidden spots on the boardwalk, and you know, I call it bike chaos in here. I mean, you know, there's various spots where you can't see the bike rack by Funland, or the bike rack is on sand, et cetera, et cetera. So I think some care and some thought put into bike racks with time would also add to it.
Question.
Yeah.
I know you, when you come by bike, you park right out front here.
I do.
Right. Is there a demand for more bike racks here? Because we have an entire parking lot behind us. We could I mean, I'm sure there's space that we could make more bike racks in the convention center parking lot.
It's one of these, if you build it, they will come type things in my mind. The bike rack out in front, which is great, and I use, my bike sticks out and blocks the sidewalk. They're just they're not, there's been no thought put into them. Gotcha. Right? They're just plopped where they're plopped. So my bike sits, and the sidewalk's very broad, but it sits out in the sidewalk 3-4 feet, right? Shouldn't really do that. But those bike racks have just been plopped down there. One of them's in the landscaping, so I don't use that one. And I think that's just an example of around town, some thoughtful use of that. We'll clean up some of the hassles of bikers, which is you're walking down Rehoboth Avenue and there's bikes everywhere. Well, the reason is because the bike rack is unusable. You know, it's the same at the beach. They're just piled on each other because they're not available there. People come and, you know, lock their bikes to my fence out in front, which ruins my fence with time. But I understand why they do it. So that's the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
I have a question, or just thank you, Collins, for, excuse me, an excellent job. If you had, we have to involve DelDOT on some of these decisions.
Yes.
If you had to pick 3 things that we as a committee could tackle and recommend to the commissioners that are short-term goals so that we can actually move forward, where would you suggest we go?
I think you start with signage, probably. So you've got to make it clear. I'd be very angry if I was given a ticket for biking on the sidewalk when there are no signs telling me I can't bike on the sidewalk, right? And is required by Del law. So signage, wayfaring signage as well. So when I'm coming down that bike route and I want to get to the bandstand, what's the best way to do it, right?
Okay, so signage would be one.
Yeah, so signage would be, thoughtful signage would be one. I think that's quick and easy. I think a longer-term plan to replace bike racks and create some bike stations to attract bikes where we, again, it's carrot, not stick, to attract bikes where we want them to go and we want them to park would probably be number 2. But I think really the biggest one of all is that crosswalk, but that's not a short term. Right. That's a potential battle and a lot of lobbying and everything else. So.
But we could start.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to start somewhere, right? And I think that I think when I read a lot of stuff from DelDOT, they're very supportive of these sorts of things today. They weren't 20 years ago. They weren't, and so I think that would be an important thing.
I'm not sure how the city would look at it. Would we pass it all to DelDOT, or would we still want to be involved somewhat? It's their street, but our town, so we'd have to work in unison with them, I'm sure.
Yes.
Kathy may know more about it than I would.
Well, I'm only going back as a former both member and chair of Streets and Transportation that we have tackled this, we have attempted to tackle this almost starting 15, 20 years ago. This is not a new issue. If you've seen them, the little, I laugh, we don't take down signs, we just add signs. Because the little blue Reach the Beach signs that are on Hickman Street coming off of State, there are several of them. They were originally designed as a way to direct bicyclists off of State Street and to come through the neighborhood to go to the beach. So that's why they were called, Reach the Beach. We also worked with DelDOT with all the plans on Grove Park, all how to get Junction Breakwater connected. I was fortunate enough to work on those plans. Our issues, though, are exactly what Collins has, they were the same then as they are now. Where to cross Rehoboth Avenue, where's the safest way to direct a bicyclist to cross Rehoboth Avenue, how to manage the circle. An experienced bicyclist knows, much to the chagrin of automobiles, that they have a right to stay right smack in the middle of that circle until they go around the circle. And the scary part is the combination of vehicles and cyclists managing a space where either one is ticking off the other, it's just difficult to manage, because even if you have signage that tells people that's allowed, you still have human beings that are trying to maneuver all this. So that's why my question was, what can we attack short term that would at least help some of the issues we have with bicyclists? We recommended 2nd Street as a cross street simply because of the issues with 1st Street. But we're back to what Collins has noticed and made certain reference to. We change visitors every week in Rehoboth all summer long. They bring their bikes with them. They rent bikes downtown. The bicycle people that are renting bikes, I worked with many of them when we were working on the trail, and they do an excellent job of trying to give people maps and trying to direct them of where to go and where not to go. But they're human beings who brought a bike from home. They're going to get on the bike. They're going to use whatever rules or not rules. I mean, including youngsters without helmets, people not 18 or 16 or whatever the rule is on motorized anything, skateboards or anything else. So we have 2 problems. 1, trying to make it safe, and 2, trying to enforce that safety somehow and be consistent with it. So if we start with signage and we start with bike racks, or at least welcoming people, that's a place to start. The long term, DelDOT and Chief Banks must be involved because they are key to making it work.
I'll share with you the DelDOT representative, when he was here, we went over to this circle, and his first reaction was, you can't see the other side. it's too tall. Not the chair, but there's a wall there. And so you don't know if another car is getting into your yield area or not. So while we're at it, perhaps we could talk about, we can leave the chair, just lower it by getting rid of that wall and keeping the shrubbery
I
down.
just like the idea of if you move that crossing, you just remove one more conflict point, I think they call them, for everybody, for drivers, for bikers, for pedestrians. And again, we're all of them, right? Or I'm all of them.
I don't want to know you guys
So you,
down
so you
here.
move it, by moving that, you just reduce that, one of those variables in a hard to control environment.
But that has to be, that has to be that cannot be a short term. I like to focus on something that we can actually accomplish and give ourselves sort of, at least with the city, okay, what can be done within a year? What is going to take at least 2 to 5 years? What are we going to really have to look at for the long run? Because First Street is never going to be wider unless we make it a one-way street, which was one of the recommendations that was made a long time ago, is make First Street a one-way street going north, make Second Street a one-way street going south, and people can make their loops and still get wherever they need to go. But there are so many issues with that. I'm not going there. I'm just saying previously there have been a large number of recommendations made that became almost impossible to implement because of all the other
The
stuff.
First Street is going to get worse before it gets better because the new hotel has a parking lot on Baltimore, and it's going to be the unloading on Wilmington, coming back to First, going over to Baltimore, parking in their lot, and then when they want their car, they have to go send somebody to get it, and comes back. So the second block may be,
Look, I think that, I really think the
Preferable.
bike boxes would help. Getting giving the bikers a space where they can sit. I think you guys have seen the one on Rehoboth Avenue. It's not a huge inconvenience for somebody in their car, but I think it would help. And just be a very visible sign that this is, again, 1,000 bikes in a day is what the Rossi Group saw. And there's 1,000 bikes and 20,000 pedestrians, right? Maybe the same pedestrian multiple times, but, crossing at that thing there. And we need to make the priority of those people, there was only 15,000 cars and trucks that came through. So, the bikes plus pedestrians have the weight there. And I think that intersection doesn't feel like that's the case.
somebody has a question we'll open up to the public for question on this subject, again.
Frank Holt,
And
24
know that we are
Wilmington
going to talk
Avenue.
about what we can do about it in the next part.
So I'd like to thank Collins. He, in 10 or 15 minutes, kind of encapsulated every issue that I've heard talked about over the past 25 years.
And I think you spoke to Mike. Mike came and spoke to you about this, right? Yeah.
So I'd like to just touch on two things. The first thing is the route. And I've probably directed people or given people map directions on bicycles more than any other person in this town. And I don't know how many times a day I do it, but it's multiple times a day. And, you've got two basic directions of navigation, north to south, which is pretty straightforward, and, west to east and east to west. And we've always done exactly what Colin suggested. If you're in downtown Rehoboth, and the north to south doesn't seem to be a problem. The one problem area I would touch on that hasn't been mentioned is right where Lake Avenue turns into Surf Avenue. There's that 90-degree turn, and people have talked about that before, but it is a recipe for disaster and something I think the committee should address. But the north to south issue, or the east to west issue, the key sticking point there is the traffic circle. I call it a meat grinder. And so for that reason, when I'm sending people from Rehoboth Avenue or Wilmington Avenue to the Junction Breakwater Trail at the end of Rehoboth Avenue Extended, I always recommend that they go an extra half a mile north and take Henlopen Avenue, because Henlopen Avenue is not as heavily trafficked, and what it allows them to do is to cut the corner of the traffic circle at Grove Park and avoiding the traffic circle. And just like Collins recommended, when I have people coming back from the Junction and Breakwater Trail to downtown Rehoboth, I recommend that they take a right immediately after crossing the Canal Bridge on Canal Street there, and take South Rehoboth Country Club Estates on the way back to points closer to the middle of the town. So, and that reason, I think your suggestions are great and they should be adopted.
Thank you.
The other thing that I'd like to talk about is you've asked about meaningful things that the committee can do right now. And sometimes when we get into discussion with e-bikes and different type of equipment, I think it's good and it should be codified and regulated. However, sometimes I think there's a failure to address the behavior and to focus solely on the equipment. And you know, any of us can go out and buy a Corvette that can do 150 or 200 miles an hour. It's still legal to buy one of these things and to have them on the roadway. Where it becomes illegal is if you're doing 100 miles an hour. So in that respect, I think the city should start focusing on addressing the behavior. And along those lines, the city of Rehoboth Beach, the police department has a bike unit. Everybody is aware of that. But if you go on the website, it's actually called the Bicycle Enforcement Unit. And if you read a little bit on the website, their mission is to enforce bicycle laws. So if you look at the city code, there's about 3.5 or 4 pages of ordinance involving bicycles, and most of them it's equipment based. However, there's 3 things that I think that the police could be doing right now to make things safer for cyclists, pedestrians, motorists. The first thing in the code, it says no bicycle shall be operated in the city faster than is reasonable or proper, and every bicycle shall be operated with reasonable regard to the safety of the rider and of other persons and properly on the public way and the sidewalks adjoining the same. So that's the big one. If people are not operating their bicycles at a reasonable speed, the Rehoboth Beach Police, the Bicycle Enforcement Unit can start pulling people over for that. The second thing, it's kind of like similar, but every person operating a bicycle shall observe strictly all traffic signs and signals and all other traffic rules and regulations applicable thereto, and shall obey the orders and directions of every officer of the city of Rehoboth Beach authorized to regulate traffic. And what I would say to that is if somebody's riding too fast and an officer says, hey, you got to slow down, I'm not sure that they have to cite a specific law, but it seems to me that the code gives them the power to, hey, if you don't slow down, then you're disregarding the direct order of a city of Rehoboth Beach police officer. And the last one, I mean, a lot of people are aware of this one, but no person shall, while operating a bicycle, indulge or engage in any kind of trickery or unsafe riding. So again, that's pretty broad, and I think it would give the police some teeth to start addressing bad behavior in the city.
Frank, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
You referred to the Surf Avenue right turn. Are you talking as you're going to Gordon's Pond Park and you are going to Ocean Drive, so you have to go down Surf? Where are you?
I think the main reason for concern is people who are coming from the north and headed to the south. Let's say they're going to the boardwalk. They might just, there's no stop sign there, and there's oncoming traffic. So if you
Give me the intersection, because what I'm understanding is if you come off Ocean Drive and you come up, and you come up from Gordon's Pond, you come up the big hill, there's a stop sign there, and then you can make a left on Surf. Is that the intersection?
I think he's talking about the bit that
where?
loops when you get closer to town by the Henlopen Hotel.
north of the Henlopen Hotel, where Surf meets
Oh,
Lake.
okay, now I'm with you. I just wanted to be sure I understood which intersection you were talking about. You're making the left turn or the right turn right there where next to the Henlopen Hotel, it meets Surf Avenue.
Well, for instance, if you're headed north, Lake Avenue becomes Surf Avenue. It's not actually a turn.
Right,
It's just Lake
right.
turns into Surf. And so for a car who's traveling at 20 miles an hour, let's say, they may not be expecting a cyclist to basically
They may not be fully in their lane.
blow that corner there in an attempt to reach the boardwalk. There's a name for the little park or
Mariners.
parking lot.
It's Mariners Park.
Mariners
Right. And it's something that's been discussed before, but I haven't heard it in a while. So.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to be sure what we were talking about.
A couple of thoughts on that. I actually take issue with some of the rule. I like Frank's intent, but the rules that are there. I don't like a rule that says I need to be going a reasonable speed. There's speed limits. I, as a biker, am allowed to operate my bike like it's a vehicle. And we've talked about speed limits here. But if the speed limit is 25, why is it safe for a car to go 25, but not me on my bike to go 25? Now, I don't go 25. It's tough to get to that speed. But so I don't like those. And I don't like the arbitrariness of saying that you're riding your bike with trickery and this person is not, because I think that's an arbitrary measure. And I would imagine that's probably why it's not enforced, why you don't see it much. Right? Safe is the key word. But in whose judgment is unsafe? And that's, I don't like arbitrary giving.
Doing wheelies up at the boardwalk would be unsafe, for instance.
Absolutely, but you're not allowed to ride your bike on the boardwalk. So, so there are. And then the big question for me and what I struggle with about enforcement is, every hour that we're, having somebody stand and monitor the bikes, they're not monitoring speeding. 3,000-pound cars that are going above the speed limit, going above 25, DUIs. And if you look at the incidents and the harm that's caused, that's where the harm's caused. Somebody on a bike is generally threatening their own health. Somebody driving a car above those speeds is threatening the health of a biker, a pedestrian, another driver. And so I struggle with enforcement. I get the idea and I like the concept of enforcement, but I'm struggling making that a priority when clearly the speed of large automobiles is a bigger threat to public safety than bicycles. So I don't have an answer to it.
Though, I think we can do both. It's not
So
an
at this
either or.
point, are we, and I'm not trying to cut you off, Collins, of course, but
I'm
are
done.
we sort of finished with your presentation?
Yes.
And do we need to go back to the agenda
do.
and determine
do.
where we go from here?
Collins, thank you very much. There's a lot of work went into that. One more
I just want to
question.
get a clarification on the bike network proposal page. Are you suggesting that there be bike lanes on this proposed,
No.
or is this just for bikes?
Signage, just,
Oh, it's just signage.
I'd love it if there were bike lanes, but I'm not suggesting it.
You're not
That's
suggesting it,
another
okay.
next level commitment, next level battle, next level everything else. To me, if you get people onto Hickman, it's a pretty quiet street, right? And frankly, if I live on Hickman, the more bikes, the slower the car traffic is going to go, the better. So no, at the moment, I'm just saying, I'd love if we've talked about King Charles maybe has room for a bike lane. I love bike lanes, but at the moment, I'm just saying, let's direct them, let's offer carrots rather than sticks to get bicyclists directly down.
Well, we're going to talk about those things in one by one on the agenda, so thank you. Yeah.
I just want to make sure, Lenny Richardson again, that we're not, I can't get the tone. Are we going to try and restrict e-bikes or?
We didn't get to that yet.
Okay.
That's on the agenda to get to.
Not on my watch.
Okay. So, and I do just want to make it very clear that you don't ride an e-bike and you get to 25 miles an hour.
I ride an e-bike. I ride all sorts of. I ride an e-bike. I ride a cross bike.
We do find that for the most part, e-bikes really help people get back on bikes.
Yes.
Where they have knee issues, hip issues, heart issues. We had a grandfather came in. He's like, I've never ridden with my grandkids because he has heart issues. Well, he can do it all the time now because if he gets tired, he has a throttle to ride with. So that's where most of our bikes go. Do we have people that abuse the rules and all that? They do on regular bikes. They do on e-bikes. So I guess that goes back
We're
to
going to
Frank's
have that
point as well.
discussion. So
Okay.
thank you, Lenny.
Thank you.
So I have a couple could I ask a couple questions?
Why don't we start the discussion and then
Perfect,
take the
perfect.
questions as
Yeah,
part of that?
that's right.
All right, so we're done with the presentation?
Yes.
All right, now we're going to go ahead and actually have a discussion on some of those. And I think our goal and our aim is to come up with concrete suggestions that we can bring to the Board of Commissioners. And I've broken these down into the 3 or 4 different categories, although they overlap, and I'm aware of that. And so don't worry if, you think something's overlapping. The 4 categories that we last meeting broke these down into were looking at bike restrictions and boardwalk concerns, looking whether or not we need more bike racks, which I think we discussed pretty much there, lighting, safety measures for bicyclists, possible bike pathways, which was a great presentation by Colin, bike lanes and sharrows. I still can't pronounce it. Sharrows. And finally, that we had some of our, well, we had one condominium association that I know of, and maybe there were more, Patricia, I'm not sure, that had concerns over lithium batteries being stored in their garages. Lithium batteries being those that power the e-bikes, and whether or not they're gonna burst into flames and so forth, particularly when they're being recharged. Particularly when they're being recharged when they're still connected to the bicycles. So it's something that's another topic that we're going to have on our agenda to discuss. All righty. The first one's bike restrictions, and I'll open it up here first. We currently have restrictions time-wise on the boardwalk. We don't have any other restrictions other than the obvious, not driving on sidewalks. Should there be other, I guess the questions to ask are, should there be other restrictions, or are there too many restrictions? Or
I had a
are we
question
happy with the
about
boardwalk rules where they are? Patricia, go
The
ahead.
boardwalk, currently, you can ride your bike from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the boardwalk. And I've always wondered, where does 5 a.m. come? Why can't you ride your bike at 3 a.m. on the boardwalk? What's the,
Because they only have one policeman on duty. And, you know, I think that, seriously, they get more policemen on in the mornings. At 3 in the morning, if you're on the boardwalk and you break your neck, no one's going to come to your aid.
but there's a policeman on duty at 5 a.m.? Is that what
At the
you're saying?
office,
Oh, at the
at the office, they don't have an extra one, you know?
And Patricia, the background of that was daybreak in the summer. That was basically, there's nothing, my thought is if you want to ride your bike at 3 a.m. on the boardwalk, go for it, because you're probably the only one in town that's on the boardwalk at 3 a.m.
I think that's the right, bikes are going to go, I think as Hoyt said, bikes are going to go where bikes are going to go.
I mean, it's not a magic number. I think the 5 a.m. when that was discussed was simply because of daybreak in the summer, to allow people from the time the sun is basically coming
One
up.
difference from when you folks discussed it is now we have cameras. So you will be on camera at 3 o'clock in the morning.
You know, I don't think they're going to give you a ticket if you're the only
No,
person on the boardwalk
sure they're
at
not.
3 a.m. biking. But that's how that first started, was simply daybreak.
Makes
Not
sense.
even enforcement, just the fact that, so we can see, so you can be seen while you're biking on the boardwalk.
It seems sensible to have those hours because people have an opportunity to ride their bikes, and yet they're not there at the busiest time running over people. Are we in agreement, or that we don't need any change as far as
Yes, I
restrictions
would
go?
like to just suggest that we do not recommend any change in the hours of biking on the boardwalk.
I think that's a
at this time.
consensus. Right?
Without it being a motion, just,
Right. Well, just don't do anything on that one.
I think our sidewalk restrictions need to be better signed if we're going to have them. I'm not sure we're compliant with what Delaware code says would need to be a sign saying, you know, no biking allowed on sidewalk. So I'd like to see that better.
I've seen some, I mean, some do exist, but
signed.
maybe not
I
enough.
think they're on the ground.
Yeah,
It
you're
says
right.
walk your bike.
Yes, that's
Doesn't
right.
say
That
biking's
is
not
right.
allowed, it
You're
says
right.
walk your bike.
All right.
Right? So, you know, I think the Delaware code seems to require that, and I think there should be some thought put into that.
there's
the
no
other thing-
signage on residential streets.
No.
In other words, depending upon what family comes in, we're back to, bikers are gonna bike where they bike. If you have and I've seen this in front of my house, if you have 5, 6-year-old who's on their two-wheel bike for the first time and wanna go as fast as they wanna go, I've actually seen parents both in front and behind them, which I celebrate, on the sidewalk. Everybody's riding on the sidewalk because it's safer for the little guy to be on the sidewalk, and mom and dad, sometimes they ride on the street, sometimes they don't. But I think the fact that there is essentially no signage other than those few walk your bikes for people to even be aware when they come into the city.
It depends on the streets, too. You go over to like the second block of Hickman Street, that's such a narrow street, and there's always cars on either side. Everybody goes on the sidewalk because you can't get through the street. The street's usually so busy, you know.
And I think the other side of that is the 15, 16-year-old who's flying down the street on the sidewalk because they just got there with their bikes and they're not going in the road because they're just going down the sidewalk because nobody's on the sidewalk.
I'd like to know, maybe Frank could tell me, do you folks give some sort of a form or a slip of information to the renters, to the bike renters?
Do, and the city used to publish.
The microphone.
I'm sorry, yeah, I have to, may I invite you up to the microphone? I'm sorry. My
You know
fault.
that, Frank.
My fault.
So we still have brochures that the city produced years
Yeah,
ago.
we
that
Cliff did those, yeah.
And Cliff did one through the Rehoboth Beach Homeowners
Association,
Association,
yeah.
which we also use. So we hand them out, but more than that, we give people a verbal admission, like stay on the right, stop at stop signs and red lights, keep your bikes off the sidewalk. And my thinking on that is they can generally remember 3 things. If they're going out for a week, we'll typically give them a brochure, but we got cases of these over the years, so we still have some that are probably 5 or 10 years old, but that's it. The one thing I wanted to add about that last discussion, and it's been mentioned before, is the city is at odds sometimes with the state as far as riding on the sidewalks. The J1 students are encouraged to ride on the sidewalks when they're out on Route 1, maybe for good reason, and when they come into the town, you know, it's not legal, so.
Would it be helpful if the city had a brochure that had all the up-to-date rules and regulations on one side and a map on the other, like the one that Cliff made?
I think so, and I've got plenty of them I could supply to the committee as an example. I don't think that they need any major changes. I think they could be recycled from the ones we were using years ago.
It's the one we developed a
Len,
while
you
ago.
agree? Yes. Thank you.
There-
It may be a small thing, but it's an easy thing.
Yeah, I have a question. So this handout you had, it says Rehoboth does not allow bikes on Rehoboth Avenue and First Street, but anywhere else in the city is okay?
That was my read of the rules, that bikes are allowed on other, there's not a blanket city sidewalk ban. It's Rehoboth Avenue and First Street.
Okay.
That was my read of it. Again, not a lawyer.
My understanding
doctor.
of it is, my understanding of it was, and I don't know if this was a state rule, but this is the rule that we went by when we were helping develop some of this. If you are 12 or under, you can ride on the sidewalk. Says nothing about parents, says nothing about that kind of safety, but
I can clear it up. It's if you're under 12, you're allowed to ride on the sidewalk on non-commercial streets.
Okay,
so
that's
that would exclude Baltimore Avenue, Wilmington Avenue, Rehoboth Avenue, parts of Lake Avenue, and maybe a few other small streets I've forgotten. So
thank you, Frank.
even if you're under 12, you're not supposed to ride on the sidewalk on the commercial district.
And First and Second Street?
No, those are open,
Yeah, I would say First and Second Street would apply because they're a commercial district as well.
but it's because of their extension. What we ran into is, where do you define where city limits start if you're riding on a sidewalk? That's where the trick comes in, is what becomes residential, what becomes,
I've never seen any enforcement except maybe on Rehoboth Avenue, and perhaps that was intentional, so.
Yes.
Perhaps, Kathy, we change the language to commercial instead of, and just, you couldn't ride on the sidewalks on commercial areas. People would understand that maybe,
I'm just saying, we're still back to signage.
Yeah,
People
right, that's what I'm
don't-
saying.
I mean,
yeah.
Delaware law allows bikes on sidewalks. And then it says cities may restrict usage.
Correct.
Provided there is traffic signage indicating it. That's what it says. And then Rehoboth says what it says.
And you're
So
saying we don't have enough of those signs.
I don't think there's any.
There are no.
Well, then we don't have enough of those signs.
Yes, so yes, I agree.
I'm writing that down, more signs.
I stand corrected. If you read the code, it's no person shall ride or operate a bicycle on the sidewalk adjoining the streets of any time. And it's no person who is 12 years of age or older shall ride or operate a bicycle on the sidewalk. But I think it's just, according to this, Rehoboth Avenue,
I thought it was Rehoboth and First Street was my read on
First
it.
Street.
Yeah, and
You're
again,
exactly right there.
yeah,
So.
it's not commercial. That term commercial, I did not see unless it's hidden in some other part of the curve. Yeah,
It's
so.
an It's an old code.
So something on that, can I interject? I think the Rossi Group said that those signs, that the paintings on the sidewalks on Rehoboth Avenue should say, "Walk your wheels," right? There are other besides bikes, like people on the skateboards, and I know all about the skateboards, not required, not allowed, et cetera. But they did say, "Walk your wheels." I don't know whether we want to consider that to explain all types of wheels. Just a
I think
comment.
somebody ought to just look and see how we meet the Delaware requirement of traffic signage required. Does that meet it? Because that doesn't say to me it's illegal to, that's more of a suggestive kind of fun, not a limit.
Regardless, it's not working real well, so we need to do something more.
One other thing I was reminded by Frank's statement, the yield at a stop sign. Delaware code allows a bike to basically treat, I'm paraphrasing, but a stop sign as a yield for all intents and purposes. Rehoboth's city website says the same. You don't have to stop, you just need to use caution and you know, like it's a yield sign. Rehoboth's code says you have to stop.
Need to change the code.
Yeah, so I think there needs to be an adjustment in the Rehoboth code around that one
And we
specifically.
do have money set aside to go over the code literally line by line over the next 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So that'll fall into that for sure. Okay, more bike racks. I think, does anyone disagree? We need more bike racks?
So comment on that. I think your presentation was fabulous on that. This is one of those short-term things we talked about that the committee can handle. We don't need to turn this over to the city, in my opinion, right? If a couple of us went around, we could figure out where the proper place for these bike racks are, suggest the kinds, say, let's take one here. I think we all can do that. I think that's a short-term win, like we talked about down there, that the commissioners would like.
Right. And I think the city manager is going to want to be involved with that, and the assistant city manager, because they know, why, they always have the reason why we can't do something, which is usually legitimate, but we didn't think of it. And so we'd want to count them in on that. But there's no reason why a couple of our members and a couple of city representatives couldn't walk around and make some changes. Now's the time to bring it to their attention, though, because we're doing a budget, and they're not free. Right.
Well, I would think ours are only suggestions. We could do that. We could do the preliminary walk if we wanted, and not tie them up. And then after we have a good solution, then we bring them in so they're not walking around with us. It's it's just an idea.
I think the consideration, as it's always been, when the scooter parking was put in, the first question was, how many parking spaces are we going to need to take away in order to put the scooter parking in? So the bike racks are going to be the same issue. If we pull the bike racks off the sidewalk, I'm not suggesting we don't do that. I'm just suggesting we need to be, when we give suggestive information, be aware that if it's taking
Of course.
away
Yeah,
something.
I understand that. Yep.
That's exactly what we were saying, but the city would have input and
Yep.
tell us why we can't do something. Okay, but nevertheless, we can take that as an endeavor, short-term endeavor. Another possibility, of course, is to ask some of the new businesses, the hotels and so forth, to incorporate bike racks into their architecture. As we're putting up hotels that we don't have a requirement now. We have parking, but we don't have bike parking.
That's a great idea.
Thought.
You see that in a lot of cities now, that it's an amenity, a safe, secure place where you can put your bike in your building and not leave it out exposed to the elements is.
What would be nice is if they were open to the public, so they were not limited to just the occupants of those hotels, but were open to anybody. Would be great. Okay, lighting, safety measures. Does anybody have any thoughts on, okay, so at some point, I was at some meeting, and it was brought out to us the reason that the employees, particularly the people that work at bars and restaurants, don't ride bikes is because they feel unsafe at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night when they have to go and get their bike and ride home with it. So I'm wondering if it would be, while we're looking at bike racks, if we might light or add some sort of safety measures to those bike rack areas, whether it be lights or what have you.
Makes sense. It's
that
the whole
was a
package. It's the whole
legitimate
package
concern.
it's a bike amenity station, right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Then we can't make sure can't conflict with the dark skies project too, right?
Oh,
too,
yeah,
too much
true.
light, right? So
That's another committee. So you're saying I get there first before they do. Good point. Okay, and safety measures, of course. Again, when when we had talked to the, maybe it was the Chamber of Commerce, perhaps it was Main Street, another complaint or concern that the employees had, we were trying to get more employees to ride bikes and less to drive cars, and was that they didn't feel safe at night when they left, particularly those that worked in restaurants that had money in their pockets, you know. Although we really don't have any record of any major problems along those lines, it was the perception of it. So,
Is there, would this be an appropriate time to ask the businesses? To me, it comes back to if you know you have employees who are riding bikes to your business to work, is there an available space out by the dumpsters? I don't care where you put it, but the bottom line of it is, should that not kind of fall back a bit on the businesses? Because if the J1 students are the primary people that are riding their bikes into town, the businesses know who's riding bikes and who isn't. That's my bottom line.
I agree.
We don't need a parking place for them unless even in the city parking lot or somewhere where they can all walk to a central place when their restaurants close. That would be my only other suggestion, is to provide a safe lighted place where all of them can
It would
park
have to be here at
bikes.
the convention center. I
Well,
mean,
see,
was the
that would
ideal
be,
situation.
and it's by the,
Reality is, no one who works down on the boardwalk is going to park their bike at the convention center and walk.
Walk, you know.
It's not going to happen.
I'm just,
Yeah, yeah.
you
They
kind of
park their
have to.
car, they park their car, you know, miles away.
Well, you have two ways to look at it. You either have a place at your place of employment to park your bike, or you have a place that's a centrally located place that the city says you can park your bike here because we'll monitor it and you can get back here after you work. The only other thing that I did want to bring up that I forgot about previously is I think there is a city code about parking your bikes, parking your bikes on any light fixtures, fences.
it's not allowed.
It is not allowed. So that is another one of those things during the summer with enforcement. It's really hard if there's not enough bike places and people line their bikes all up everywhere. And I'm not aware that there's any enforcement of that. But I don't know how you would enforce it. That's a Chief Banks question.
Right, and it is. And it's a catch-22 for the chief, because on one hand, we want people to use bikes, but when they get here, and we tell them,
Yeah,
well,
yes.
you have to carry your bike in the
It's
store
carrot,
with
carrot
you.
versus, it's carrot versus stick,
yeah.
right? And the carrot to me is you build a bike parking area that's easy to use, that isn't going to hurt your bike, that, you know, is accessible, not the stick of you may come back and your bike's gone because we've clipped your lock and everything else.
And I mentioned you, the chief couldn't be here today because of another commitment, but he's excited and very enthusiastic about working with us on this. So he's more than happy to help us, and we appreciate him.
And as we look at parking spaces for bikes, we also have to be aware that people bring bike trailers with their children, with their beach stuff. I mean, we're not just talking about needing perhaps a little bike spot, be it called little, but we also need to be sure we're providing at least enough space so someone who's bringing an additional tail on their bike has a spot to put it, even if they have to unhook it, at least to have it where it's secure.
Which is a lot of space. You guys good?
Good.
Yeah. Safe possible bike pathways. Well, I don't think anyone could have done any better than what's already done for us, Collins. Thank you very much. I do have a question on the pathway. Why do we have two ways to get down to the boardwalk?
Our thinking was as follows: employees, people who work, they're going to want to get close to Rehoboth
Oh, they
Avenue.
go downtown, right?
Right.
Okay.
Other people, we're trying to direct towards the beach. So we might even have more than that, right? Because we might want to send them to several amenity, nice parking spots along the boardwalk. So our thinking was no employee is going to go park down on Hickman Street and then walk down. They want to be on Wilmington. That was sort of the thinking.
Of course, for a while, they were parking at the school and walking over the bridge, so this is yet shorter than that. Now, that didn't work out in the long run because of weather and blah, 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 blah. But there were some people, J1 students that did park several years ago at the school.
Automobiles.
At the elementary school, and then go over the Turtle Bridge. And that was a walk. But- All righty.
And there's some of them come in, they'll park somewhere, and then they'll get their little skateboard and
Yeah.
go from the car into town.
Right. There is that.
Could I just say one thing on the pathways, please? Please. That great presentation, again, I like it. We should let the chief handle whether we want people to go one way on Lake Drive, the opposite direction. I'm not a fan of that. I think if you went them down St. Lawrence, it might be better. But, you know, I know why you did it, but I'm not sure the chief will like it, but that's his question. And then the other thing is crossing the, at the bike path there, coming in, take a right, and getting them off, allowing people to cross Rehoboth Avenue is a great idea. The only thing is that second crosswalk where it's dangerous as all heck, you know, right from Rise Up, is it right? Rise Up,
yep.
Thank you. To Grove Park, a lot of people access the park when they have the Tuesday, the farmer's market, thank you, I'm having brain hemorrhage. I'd just love to see some push-button signs with bright lights to let the people cross that section. I've always advocated for that for the pedestrians. Maybe you could say no bikes, they still could ride it, but but if we directed them that way and said bike path this way. But anyway, that's just my comments on that.
My thinking was just make it a people path. If you're coming up Rehoboth Avenue, you could still get there on that side. If you're coming up from the eastern side, you can still get around the circle on the southern side and then the northern side. And so you just the only people you're inconveniencing are those who are going from Rise Up to the market, and you're making them go 150 feet.
Round.
Yeah, so anyway, point taken.
At some point, and perhaps there was a homeowners association, if I remember correctly, it was a couple of years ago, they suggested yellow flashing lights that always flash, not on and off. Because if I remember correctly, one of the objections to the on and off was people slam on their brakes and get rear-ended. So, but a flashing light that you would see from a quarter mile away, it would slow you down, and they would just flash all the time, whether people were crossing or not.
And again, DelDOT would have to
Yeah,
agree to
they'll
that.
have to be in on that. Melissa?
I just wanted to share with the group, you know, when we update the rules, the safety rules that the Rehoboth Beach was going to put out, if there's a little map with it, is it possible to suggest the bike path that Collins presented?
That is on the map that Frank has.
It's already on there,
not
so
much
it's a,
different from what
it's a
was proposed.
suggested bike path. I understand, you know, there could probably be some things that we can't, you know, make it a official thing right now, but if we could just increase that, I think it would be.
Cost anything.
Right, and it is a safety issue. It really would be a good thing for bikers to be aware of
Even
these.
if it's only suggested, it's suggested by.
Exactly, yeah.
You just have to think of how you get the people from that dual bike lane on the north side of Rehoboth Avenue to the southern route. Because they're going to go on the sidewalk along Grove Park,
Right.
and then they're going to go across the circle there, right? And that's what they're doing today, so it's, you know. But I think once you get to there, a lot of people are like, oh, I can see the bandstand on Rehoboth Avenue, so I'm just going to go straight down Rehoboth Avenue.
Yeah, there is that. But the signage too would help. If we had more signage, I think would be helpful, just to sort of
They knew
get
there
them
was bike
started.
parking available to them, as Colin
the
said,
end.
you use the
Many
carrot.
carrots as possible.
And there'd be a reason for them to go out of their way, so to speak.
And I was thinking too, at the end of the streets that are at the boardwalk, I can't remember the streets exactly, but there are areas where it seems like there's like yellow lines and stuff at the end.
Those are fire zones. You cannot put anything in those fire zones.
That's too bad, because I was
Those are
thinking those
the
are
hydrant,
perfect.
those are the fire hydrant zones, and you can't park anything in those places.
Gotcha. Okay, well, there you go with that.
Probably
Okay.
where there's a couple of gazebos we have, maybe like the back of the gazebos have small little bike racks there now, right, Colin?
They're on the sand.
Right.
Well,
So, I mean, those could perhaps be expanded.
Yeah, those are the places to start, right?
Right, there are places to start,
put
right.
good racks
There's
there
even
and-
cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if we put in those bike pumps and things there, maybe that would kind of officialize those areas and make them more, I don't know, user-friendly and places where people want to park their bikes, not park them on Rehoboth Avenue necessarily.
I think that the idea, I think what would be beneficial all the way around is, first of all, any bike rack should be on a solid surface, not in the vegetation or on the sand. So that becomes that issue. The second thing is when the parking spaces were put on Baltimore Avenue and First Street, and that little parking lot there for bikes, that was the intent for J1 students to be able to have a little parking lot. But if we had more little parking lots on safe spaces, then that's what I'm understanding we're
That's the
recommending.
intent. That's the intent.
Well, we have some over in Baltimore where there'll be like, they took 1 or 2 car lot spots. and made
That's
them, right?
that's, as long as we're making, if we make recommendations, we need to consider the alternative or what the feedback's
We have them
gonna
there.
be.
The end of Oak also randomly has some bike racks in the street in
And
kind
don't
of
they share them with the little Vespas, with the little?
I don't know.
I mean,
No, you don't, the scooter parking, my
parking
understanding
is-
is, the scooter parking is scooter parking, that's where the little narrow spots are. And the bike parking all have racks. So if it's only the little narrow spots, those are technically for scooters or motorized vehicles. And the bike racks are supposed to only be for bikes, which doesn't always happen because people park what they're.
And Collins, did we hear from you correctly that those circle, the one post with the circle on it that like is in front of Camp Rehoboth and so forth are not recommended?
No, that is the recommended.
That's the recommended one. But
Because
can
you
only
can
put
lean
one-
your bike, you want something you can, the problem with the schoolyard things is you put the wheel in and then the bike moves, right? So you want something you can lean your bike against and then lock it
Is there a
to
way
it.
to do many of them in a given spot?
Yeah, there's all sorts of guidelines and everything. And those appear in a few spots around town.
They're in front of M&T Bank.
They're in front of M&T, although they're too close together there, you couldn't use all of them.
But
They're sort of
You could
installed
adjust.
willy-nilly. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, moving on. Oh, sure. Yes.
Lenny Richardson again. If I love the signage, we don't have enough of it, but if we could even add QR codes or something that point to the Rehoboth map on some of the signage, especially somebody's coming over from Lewis or somebody's riding up from Bethany, just as they're coming into town, if it says, hey, bike
a good
rules,
idea.
scan here.
It's a great idea. People aren't using a lot of maps these days.
that was also a suggestion made in the past to even put on any of the permit parking, where a person could at least use a QR code to find out where to get a permit, or hopefully in the future, we can actually get your permit while you're standing there in front of the sign. But we'll see how that goes.
Last thing on my list, oh, well, not last thing, but I'm bringing this up for Cliff. Sharrows, which I cannot pronounce. For those of you that don't know what they are, they're the little signs that are on the street that indicate that you should share the street, bikes and cars alike. Do I have that correct, Colin? Is that-
That's correct.
And some people have complained that it gives a bad impression. It gives the impression to the bikes that they're in a bike lane. And so they go in the middle, thinking that they're in a bike lane. And certain people have mentioned to us that we should do away with them. So what do you all think?
I have a question about.
Yep.
On Rehoboth Avenue, it seems like both lanes have it on there. And now, is that recommended, or?
It's a state road, and the state put the sharrows in.
Yeah, the state, I think we only have them on state roads effectively, I think, but I may be wrong.
There's some on city roads.
And
I mean, on the other.
the idea of them, it's meant to show you, it actually is meant to say to you, take the middle of the lane. This is the safe space where you're not going to get doored by somebody opening their car door. You're not going to have somebody back up. And that's the key for Rehoboth Avenue, is if you're coming down and somebody's backing out of their parking space, I think you can be in either one. They're a little, in the bike advocate community, sharrows are a little controversial. I said this last time, a little controversial. They're not loved by everybody because a lot of people don't understand them. But the idea is you're meant to actually drive over them, and that's the safe spot to be. Because if you, on a skinny lane, if you're over to the right, your problem is a big enough vehicle coming past you thinks it can get by. I had it on the way over here today, somebody at a stoplight. I literally could have reached out with my elbow and hit their window when they passed me, right? And you don't want that. If I was in the middle of the lane, they have to wait, right? Or I find a safe spot where I can let them through. So.
But on Columbia Avenue, Hennepin Avenue, they could be holding up 40 cars behind them if they're in the middle.
The bottom line is, you have a right to that road as well as the vehicles.
And it's a safety
This is
issue.
why I'm just- this is why people
If-
don't like
if you've
the
been on
bike,
if you've been on a bike and somebody comes by you 6 inches from you,
Right.
it's scary as hell. And that's where problems happen. And so it's a question of prioritizing safety versus those cars behind you getting somewhere 20 seconds slower.
Okay. So is the consensus that we're not going to,
I just have one comment.
go, please?
All right, I'm not saying take them away, but I hate them. Because if the cars don't know what they are, then it doesn't matter if the guy's in the middle of the road or he's looking at them. Most cars just don't know. But I'm not saying take them away because they're a safety thing, but
If the name was changed to Share the Road or something like that, or is there a cute little phrase that we could replace it with?
I have no cute phrase.
You always have cute phrases.
I do, but not for that one.
All right, next meeting, we'll expect you to have a cute phrase.
I think at this point, the primary objection to them appears to be, especially the ones that the state has put in on their controlled roads, that there seem to be lots of them. Where originally, when they were put on some of the residential city streets, they were put there as a reminder, as a safety, they were intended as a safety precaution, whether you understood them or not. Bicyclists know what they mean. So if the cars don't understand, then the car's just going to ride the road where it goes. But I think it's the state came in and put them lots of places that not necessarily were recommended by the city, but they had the right to do that. So we're kind of caught.
Would it be helpful before the next meeting if I contacted Mr. Haig from DelDOT and asked him what the state's opinion of, or what the latest the state is doing with these sharrows? Find out where, since they're technically theirs, you know. All right, I will do that.
Frank's got a question too.
Yeah, sure.
So one thing I might recommend for you for the next meeting is to just give all members a copy of the city code relating to bicycle and the state code of Delaware. It's been a while since I've looked at some of these, but in the city code, it still says that all bicycles operate on the roadways shall be kept to the right and operated as near as practicable to the right-hand edge of the public way. I believe that was the state law, but they've modified it.
They have.
And now there's, upon all roadways of sufficient width, a bicycle operator shall travel in the right-hand half of the roadway, except as follows, and there's 7 exceptions there. So this seems to be another one of those things where having the city code and the state law in hand will help guide the
Frank,
committee.
in my piece, I actually go through some of those. And in my view, what's happened is Delaware has updated recently to a more humanized, vehicle-friendly code, and Rehoboth's is static. And my understanding, again, is the state law, wins, has the primacy. So I think it's important to go through. I wonder why Rehoboth code had to just copy and paste a lot of those rules into its own code if it was already state law. It just seems to set up an opportunity for them to conflict with time.
Problem is that probably the city code hasn't been changed in 40 years.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
But if the goal of the city code was don't repeat something that's already state law,
Yeah, right.
right, then you don't have to update it. So.
Blame someone else, too.
Yeah. But Frank, you're absolutely correct. It's much more bike-friendly in the Delaware code.
And I might add, in the cycling community, there's 2 schools of thought. There's some people that always want to stay as far to the right as practicable so you don't antagonize motorists. And there's other people that want to take up the entire lane whenever they see fit. And the middle ground among people who ride a lot is usually both. You always want to stay as far to the right as practicable, but if there's a car pulling out, or if there's no room, or if you don't think there's enough space for a car to overtake you, then you're better off. Like the bridge down at Silver Lake is a prime example. You can't get far enough to the right to allow a car to overtake you.
We've had that discussion, haven't we?
You want to take up the whole lane there, so.
Yeah, we've had that meeting, and we will again. Frank, while you're up here, can I ask you a quick question, please? What do you do with your lithium batteries?
So we're working with our suppliers and doing recycling programs. We're also able to take them sometimes to Delaware Solid Waste or to even Lowe's.
My concern is when you're using them, where do you keep them? Do you keep them inside? Are you worried about fire?
We've got a fire-safe cabinet, but as you've mentioned before, a lot of these fires occur when they're being charged. So we've got a standing rule. We never leave bikes charging if there's someone not there, and we have fire extinguishers at all of our stores. But it is an issue, and just within the past few years, the federal government has mandated that all batteries be UL certified, and the UL certification is probably the highest that there is. Significantly reduces the chances of any fires, and there's some states such as California have acted to ban e-bike batteries that aren't UL certified. So on one hand, you've got the entire industry, the legitimate part of the industry. I can't speak for third-party platforms like Amazon, but you've got that whole end of the industry moving to UL certification because they have to. On the other end, you have batteries that are now getting close to 10 years old that are degraded, that didn't have the higher safety standards, and they're a fire hazard. So, what we're telling people now is if your battery is over 4 or 5 years old, or if you have one of the original, generation e-bikes from 10 or 15 years ago, you probably need to get rid of that battery, stop using it.
Our problem, of course, is at rental houses. The renters bring one and they put it in the garage, and who knows what happens. So I think, thank you for your answer, but I think our problem is individual users, not companies like Frank's. But are we going to restrict people from putting them inside their buildings at all? Pat, what are they doing with the condominiums?
Well, it comes down to insurance. The way this all started is insurance companies weren't insuring buildings, condominium buildings that had Teslas and other cars that are e-cars. And so that's what drove this conversation. And so we had to find, the Henlopen condominium had to find an insurance company that would cover us because we do have a few cars now in the underground parking.
If you've ever seen an e-bike fire, it can look like a Roman candle. I mean, it's fast and it's violent and they're hard to put out. But common sense goes a long way. If you don't have anything flammable, close by, like if it's in a parking garage where the only thing that's down there is maybe some other bicycles and a lot of concrete, you're probably okay. But the thing I would fall back on is common sense to never leave your e-bike charging unattended. That's a good rule of thumb.
I'm worried about a 14-year-old kid here at the beach on vacation, That's the one we're worried about, who pulls it into the garage and leaves it recharging overnight.
So Mark, would we cover ourselves based on Frank's recommendation by recommending as a committee both to any of the hotels and to all the realtors that rent their properties that a statement simply be made in your rental agreement that any e-bikes can only be charged when there's someone there to monitor them. We can't control what happens when people bring the bikes in, but if all the realtors and the hotels, if we make that recommendation, then we put it back on the people who are renting properties, and then it needs to become part of their rules, because we can't make rules for this city. We can't make rules for residents.
Well, we can.
Look, my own opinion here is this does happen, and cheap batteries and people using chargers that don't match the batteries, it's not a good thing, and this is a risk. But I'm not sure this rises to the level of import that this is what the city needs to be making rules about. there's a lot of things that can burn a house down,
Yeah, but
right?
somebody, all we need is one person gets seriously injured, you know, and then we regret that we didn't have a rule.
So Collins, you have e-bikes, you have lithium batteries. Did you have any issues with home insurance?
No,
You didn't? Okay.
I don't. So I've got multiple EVs and an e-bike. So, but I just don't think it rises to the importance. There's a lot of ways people could burn a house down. We don't tell people to not burn oil on their stove and when they're not in the room, right?
tell
But
them-
you probably get more house fires from that than you do from.
We do tell them not to keep a gas grill within so many feet of a house, you know.
And we can go down a list of about 95 other things that, I don't know, to me, it just feels like that this is, you know, this is not a non-issue, but I'm not sure it rises to the level of
Guys, any
importance.
thoughts?
I'll let you go first.
I don't see how we would be able to enforce it. I feel like we have enough things that we have on the books that we can't enforce. Why would we add yet another thing? Maybe that's something that the Airbnb people or somebody would want to take on. I don't even know, maybe they are already putting something in their own, contracts that say something about that, but I'm with Collins. I don't think that this is something that we could, it seems like we have other issues that might be more.
I agree. So where do you stop? The cars next, and I just don't think we got enough problems.
Gotcha. You guys?
But maybe just the suggestion needs to be just to acknowledge that we discussed it and feels it's a responsibility.
We could put it in our brochure that we're planning on promoting, a simple warning in the brochure.
I mean, as long as we just acknowledge we discussed it and we feel like it's not our responsibility, but people should be aware that they can catch fire and.
Put that in the minutes, Patricia.
Mark, I agree with you on that. I think if we're going to do a QR code or something, maybe it's a standard part of the verbiage, hey, caution with your,
You can
batteries.
repeat what Frank told us about the UL requirement.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Okay. Anything from the public on bicycles before we move on? Anybody up here have anything else? I think our action statement will be, I will put together with Patricia, the actual recommendations that we've come up with today and send them around to everybody, because I have a month, so it's not a rush. We'll send them around to everybody and have you make comments, changes, whatever, and then we'll get them together and have them ready by the March 2nd Commissioners meeting and present them at that point. Colin, I'm not sure, I will ask Stan, the mayor, perhaps they may ask you to give your presentation.
I'm
Are
happy
you
to
okay with that?
If you, yeah. if you'd
Wonderful.
like me to.
Great, thank you.
And we can compress it to just the most important bits or whatever need.
Great, okay, all right.
Okay, Mark, just as
Yep.
a question, you indicated this would be presented at the March 2nd.
The second
commission-
meeting in
The
Commissioners
second
meeting.
meeting in
Second,
March.
right, that's the new
why I
rule.
wanted to be sure that that wasn't a
Right.
date.
I just
Yes.
want to make sure, we're not looking at it might be the 5th, it's more like the 19th or whatever the
Okay.
exact dates are. Okay. Okay, now we have open citizen comment on any subject that you'd like to speak on. Is there anybody? After waiting 2 hours, they're better be.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Henry Buddy Clark. I'm a resident of Rehoboth Beach, and I'm here on behalf of veterans all through the town. I'm a member of Post 7447, Veterans of Foreign Wars. I'm a past commander of Post 5 American Legion. I'm a member of the Disabled American Veterans for over 50 years and a member of the Sons of American Revolution. So I have a lot of ties with veterans organizations, and I'm very proud of that. We have an issue that some of you may be aware of at the Patrician Towers condominium, where we have a disabled veteran who has difficulty with mobility, gaining ingress and egress of the building. And there's been letters that have been sent. There's petitions that I dropped off some this morning, actually. Excuse me. And I know that there's a process with building licensing and permits that are citizen concerned, and I've completed one of those and sent them in. So we're trying to get all the right areas. But an issue is we have a 100% disabled Vietnam War veteran who has difficulty maintaining ingress and egress from his building. And it's something that I know there's plenty of stuff to work on in the city. Plenty of, you guys may not necessarily have this on your agenda, but it's something that to the hearts of veterans is important to all of us, that we have the ability to be mobile, and he has mobility problems. So I would just ask that to what extent that you have the ability that you could either take this on or pass it on to those that can take it on to try to resolve this in as timely fashion as possible. I thank you very much.
We have our attorney, Lisa Ogden, with us. And Lisa, do you have anything to say? Other than?
No, Commissioner, thank you.
Okay, it has been passed on, is what I'm saying, to Attorney Ogden. And I think we're going to, because it's a legal issue, we're not going to have any discussion on it here today. All righty?
I appreciate your opportunity to speak. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Well, we thank you all for spending your time with us today. Gosh, you must have dull lives. This is the best thing you can think to do with your hours. Thank you. Next meeting, and March the 12th, is that good? That'll be the second Thursday. Anything else? Anything else from the public? And thank you all for coming. Seriously, we appreciate your time. Thank you all for coming. This meeting's adjourned.